Hey everyone, welcome back to the Scaling SaaS podcast brought to you by Zeno Digital Consulting Group. Now, we usually talk with founders and leaders in the SaaS world, but every so often I like to bring in someone slightly outside of that lane whose journey still has a ton of relevance for anyone building and scaling a business. Today is one of those days. So I'm joined by Alex Loveless, founder of Admissions Angle, an education consulting company helping students stand out in an increasingly competitive admissions landscape. Alex is a Goldman Sachs 10,000 small businesses alum and someone who thinks really deeply about growth, hiring, and how technology, including AI, is reshaping his industry. There's a lot founders can learn from his perspective. Alex, great to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me, Brad. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I did also want to start by saying, when you first reached out, I do confess that I thought that it was a Supreme Court justice trying to cold outreach me. I read it as Brett Cavanaugh, not Brad Cavanaugh. And I was very confused for a second, but I'm excited for this conversation and, looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, Kavanaugh is not a typical name. So when he got nominated, I was like, oh man, here it goes. But
Yeah.
his is with a K and then is with a C. So that's the K is very much more Irish. We actually spent a year living in Ireland, and you see the K Kavanaugh, and also there's no U, whereas I have a
Right.
U. I'm assuming that came from like Ellis Island, where they said it and they just wrote it with a U when it's actually
Yeah.
Kavanagh. But
We get that with
who knows?
Loveless, Lovelace. I think there's like the Lovelace iteration. I think there's some famous, like Ada Lovelace is like a famous female
Yeah.
mathematician or something like that. And but yeah, no, I definitely get what you're talking about.
So where remind me where you're calling from today?
Yeah, so we're in New York City. We're based out of Queens. Our office is in Brooklyn. So yeah, we're East Coast time, and yeah, I guess we're in the future compared to where you are by like an hour.
An hour. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's always interesting. Well, cool. So for listeners that don't know your background, what led you to start Admissions Angle? It's not. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a typical, but like that's a unique. It's a very niche space to be in. So what drove you to do that?
Yeah. So I guess one thing we have in common is that I've also lived abroad. After I graduated college in 2008, I was a math major looking for a finance job, and it just was the worst possible time after the Great Recession to be doing that here in New York City. So I had an opportunity to move out to South Korea. My mom is Korean, and I decided to wait out the job market, move out there, like work as an English teacher, and then like see what the job market looked like a year afterwards. And I ended up staying out there for 10 years. I really loved it out there for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons was getting into the education space. I started off as a teacher and taught a lot of different grades. Moved into test prep because there's a lot of Koreans looking to get to colleges in the United States. Taught the SAT through the Princeton Review in Seoul. And then, like after doing that for a few years, got an opportunity to work for a college admissions company, like something really similar to what we built here in the United States in Seoul, South Korea. And after a few years, became a managing partner, and just really got interested and invested in this space. In Korea, like education is really serious, and people spend a lot of money on it. I think they're kind of like a little bit in the future in terms of services geared, for these things. So it wasn't so weird to have a company like that out there. And then we moved back to America, my partner and I, in 2019, and that's when we started Admissions Angle. And it was a weird time right before COVID. We started a company, and we were built for virtual. So actually, COVID helped us a lot in the beginning and moved a lot of people into the medium that we were working in. And yeah, we wanted to do something a little bit different from what we did out in Korea, but also take what we learned in terms of helping students get really great results and standing out in the admissions process. And we've been doing this for yeah, I guess 6 years now, which is crazy. I know there's statistics about how most businesses don't survive past the 5-year mark. I think it's more than
Yeah.
half of them don't make it past
Yeah.
that. So that's a really cool milestone to have made. And yeah, and now what we do is essentially like we help students to find authentic growth to get exceptional results. And that is kind of like our philosophy. And we've been helping like hundreds, probably 1,000 plus at this point, high school students to go to college and get into a really good one, and work with them one on one to do so. And yeah, we're really proud of what we do. So
Man, you like kind of crazy on the timing. So you graduate college in the one of the worst financial crises known to man, and then you start a business right before we hit a 100-year pandemic.
yeah, that's kind of crazy. Like these huge world circumstance like events have shaped my life a lot. And I don't think I am the only one by far. It definitely it probably has shaped a lot of industries, a lot of people's career paths, the decisions that they're making about these like big picture things. And we were kind of fortunate. And I feel very fortunate that I'm in the education space right now. No shade to the finance industry. I have a lot of people who are in the finance industry and friends and family, but education is something that I do like. It's a space that I get a lot of satisfaction from like being a part of. We love to work with young people. They keep us young. They keep us up to date with some of the trends that are happening. I think I knew what
Sure,
the
yeah.
whole 6-7 craze was probably at least a couple months before everyone else did. Not that that's something to be proud of, but yeah.
And I've seen references to it, and I don't even know what it means. So I'm totally out of the loop.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
but yeah.
so yeah, that's crazy. So you mentioned Princeton Review. So like, what did you see in the admissions space that made you think, hey, I can actually do this differently. I can do it better. How do you differentiate yourself from, just a more kind of testing, Princeton Review type model?
Yeah, so we do test prep, but what we mostly do is help students with what we call mentorship. So as early as like eighth grade, we work with students to have conversations. We're kind of just like a coach of sorts, like a career coach of sorts. And we're just trying to get students to talk about these things a little bit earlier than like when they normally would talk about them. And also in a space that's a little bit more comfortable than possibly having those conversations with their parents. And every family's different, but I remember being a teenager, and every teenager, they get a little angsty. They want to be a little bit rebellious, or they want to be different from their parents. And it's not always the easiest conversation to have with your parents with all the expectation and baggage and everything that comes with that. So we mostly we saw what was happening in Korea. Uh, the average public high school counselor works with 470 students for one counselor, which
Yeah,
is
that's
crazy. And I think they
yeah.
spend like about 45 minutes of one-on-one time per student for the entire 4 years. So it's just something it's not going to get you that personalized experience. Like it just makes it so that you get information that's just to the mean, the most average, safest advice that, is not gonna, be too, ambitious for some of the lower achieving students, but it's also not going to really help the ambitious students. So we work with all kinds of students, but a lot of families do have high achieving students that come to us where they're just trying to make sure that they're not squandering the potential of like a really smart kid and getting into a good career path. But more so than just the admissions results, we really help our students to figure out what their interests are academically. So for example, like engineering is something that hardly any high school student really has any meaningful connection with or understanding of. Engineering is a very viable, and I would say, somewhat future proof career path to go into, although it's very competitive. And uh, a lot of high schoolers, like, they don't know what it really is. But you're asked to make this decision as to whether you want to be an engineer, like when you're a senior in high school and applying to college. So just having conversations to help them figure out what engineering is, what the different kinds of engineering are, what can they get involved in to kind of get some day-to-day understanding as to what engineering is like. And then, trying to see if they like that. And if not, you move on to some other option like business or sociology or pre-med or pre-law, like political science, whatever it is. And then we try to keep going until something like does spark them. And eventually it usually does happen. Not every single time, but we at the very least are helping the students think about this earlier. And then what it helps them do is it helps them to actually like build a resume that looks like they're not just talking the talk when they're applying to colleges as to what they want to do, but they've actually like walked the walk a little bit. And top colleges want students that know where they're going in life. It's a lot more of a compelling story when you say like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is why I want to do it. Look at all these things that I've done over the course of the last 2, 3 years that prove and show this and show that I'm capable of doing this. Like, it's a much more compelling story than saying, oh, I'm undecided. I have no idea what I want to do, but look, I'm a good person though. You should accept me. So
Right. And you start with students as young as 8th grade?
8th grade, yes, although it's nothing really counts for college in 8th grade, but
Or
no, you definitely
but
are
at least having
setting.
you start having that conversation about, like, the next 4 years, you're about to be a freshman, and so the next 4 years, if you are intentional with what
Mhm.
you're doing, then you can set yourself up, like you just said, the things on your resume basically are gonna be much more in line with where they wanna be. So you kinda help them figure out what they wanna do with their life, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think setting them up for success is the biggest thing, and I think that our mentorships also are like I think on the like secondarily, but also maybe just as importantly, like we're helping students with these skills for goal setting, accountability, things as simple as like email etiquette,
Yeah.
capitalizing the right words for things.
Oh, man.
We encourage a lot of our students to do cold outreach to organizations or research labs or things like that because I think it's like a really important skill that might get even more important, going down the line for young people. And you'd be surprised as to how few young people know how to do something as simple as write a professional email for a cold outreach. And
Yeah.
these are things that I think help them in the long run, even beyond just these things. So we try to use software as best we can for like project management and trying to help students to be accountable and transparent. And that's another secondary part of it.
Yeah, the capitalization thing is funny. That's definitely a thing,
Yep.
nowadays. It is funny when I my boys are 17 and 20, they're not like they're much more in line with kinda grammar and all that, so their texts are normal, but, like, if I ever text one of their friends or anything like that, it's like another world. It's sometimes it's hard to even understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's a trend for them to turn off the auto caps on their phones. They if you use capital letters, you're like a boomer and like you're not cool.
Yeah,
And like I know it's weird. I don't get it personally because I think grammar is really important for making sure that people understand what you're trying to say. But
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So this is a pretty high touch personalized service. I mean, you have to how do you maintain kind of the level of quality that something like that needs, and not just with your existing numbers, but as you grow and you scale and as demand increases, how do you maintain that level of quality?
Yeah, so that was the big issue that we had going into starting the 10,000 small businesses program. And we're still figuring out. Although we have made a lot of progress in this, I think what we realized is that we were not doing we're not putting enough effort into our hiring practices, or we weren't asking the right questions, and we were um, we were not being intentional enough with what we were looking for in terms of like fit for our company. Because with our company in particular, when someone starts working with one of our students, it's devastating for there to be turnover because these families want to work with someone who, if they start with their student in 8th grade, they want the same mentor to keep that relationship for 4 or 5 years. So if someone works with us for just a couple years and they just decide, oh, I'm going to move on to the next thing and I can't work with you anymore, it's devastating for us. So we really had to start thinking about like the culture of our company and the values that we're looking for in the people that work for us, and that hiring like with intentionality I think was really important. We just had our biggest hiring season last month, and we were really successful. I think because of this intentionality, we're super impressed with the quality of people that we got to come join our team. We had this guy from Idaho who got recruited to play football at Harvard, studied economics and applied math, and then he was as recently as this past year at the Browns training camp trying to make it as an NFL player, but and eventually couldn't make it. But he had done mentorship while he was a college student, in a nonprofit kind of like pro bono way, and he really loved it, and that's why he came to us. And I don't know if it's more of an indictment at the state of the economy, at the quality of the people that we attracted, or if we just did something really well on the job posting. But I think that that was a big thing that like we have to have like hiring with intention on, make sure that we are doing that properly. And I the scaling for us has been tough. It's been a tough thing to figure out, but I think that was the one big thing that we took away from it. And then the company culture side of things, we also understood that people are doing the work that we do, maybe not necessarily just for the reason of making money. I think there are people who just genuinely like to mentor people, and especially mentor the younger generation. So we now have like understood that as as a selling point for what we do. And we're trying to really build that into the culture of what we do. So, for example, we have a pro bono program that we do for community college students where we ask our mentors to help participating in helping community college students who are looking to transfer to a 4-year degree and help them with that application process. And, it's good training, for us to a certain extent, for these mentors, but it's also just something that kind of feeds into the culture of like what we try to do is like, we are trying to help our clients get into the best schools possible, but we also want to make sure that we are helping these non-traditional pathways to higher education as well. And I think that, that's helped us too.
So how do you ensure, I mean, you sort of answered this already, but maybe a little bit more of a deep dive. So how do you ensure consistency across your mentors? I mean, do you have like a training program that you do when they get hired, or like how do you make sure they're all
Yes.
on the same level of quality that you want?
Yeah. So in the beginning, it's easy because my wife and I, my partner and I, were the ones who worked with all the students. But as we've grown, we have relied on technology and like software. So I think, the biggest things that we've used, like Trello has been the big one that we've been using, although we are kind of currently reevaluating if we want to adopt Notion. I've heard really good things about Notion. Like being able to set up our systems to and AI actually has been really helpful for the summarizing of meetings with students and being able to, because a big pain previously was having to write these manual summaries of our meetings with students and then send them to the parents to keep them up to date as to what's happening. Has actually helped a lot. But so a lot of it has been on our internal processes and systems to take these summaries, have our team, the whoever's in charge of the academic management, look over the summaries, make sure that things are going well, performance reviews for the mentors, all the typical like, things that you go through as a growing business that maybe you didn't do when you're just a 1 or 2 person shop. And again, the 10,000 Small Business Program was really helpful for giving us that framework as to how we should do this, how we should scale. And I think more than anything, it's just given us the confidence to really go for it because we felt like now we know what the framework is and we know like where to put our time and energy and prioritize, these things. So
Yeah, I spoke to the CEO of Playback Health. Is one of the first podcasts that I ever did. In fact, I think it was the first one that I did. And so that's basically he partnered with a doctor, who was I guess a friend of his, and it started with basically just uh kind of recording the patient and doctor interaction, because like the patient walks out the door and they just forget what everything was said unless they took really really good notes. So now they literally record it, and it's all transcribed. It's all, formatted into patient notes, goes right back to the patient. The stuff that's insurance related gets basically sent to the insurance company,
Yep.
so having that, just someone essentially kind of listening over your shoulder that is going to transcribe all of this stuff, that's a just a game changer in general for
Totally.
productivity.
And I'll shout out Loom also. We've been using a lot more Loom in the last
Yep.
year just for creating like the processes and the screen share because everything we do is virtual to like show to our team how to do things or how to deal with a certain issue or question, things like that. So yeah, I think like
Yeah.
using technology is I mean smartly is definitely the answer.
Yeah, I use Loom all the time. That's a great little tool for specifically for screen recordings and things like that. If you just want to show somebody something real quick, you just make a quick Loom,
Yep.
send it off, and off you go. Um, so yeah, so you mentioned, so let's maybe talk a little bit about let me let's dive into this a little bit more. So you've been exploring using AI and maybe some small ways, these types of things. Maybe internal SOPs, that sort of
Hmm.
stuff. So have you thought about just longer term, you know, maybe not for you in general, but also the industry,
Hmm.
right? Do you thought about how you see AI kind of impacting the emission space overall next few years?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's already like shifted a lot of things. Colleges are having to come out and really explicitly state, for I think the most obvious way that it's impacted things is on helping with essay writing for college applications. And colleges have
Sure.
had to come out and say very explicitly, like, we consider using AI to write your essays or help with it, write your essays as plagiarizing. And in the education space, plagiarizing is one of the biggest sins that you can have. So, um, but we also know kids are using AI for everything. They're not supposed to be using it for homework, but they're also still using it. So, like right now, I don't see it as like a super useful tool, especially for the kids who are really trying to take shortcuts for writing essays, because the nature of AI is that it's giving you the safest answer, like the answer that's like least likely to be wrong. It's not really more about like finding truth because it doesn't know what truth is, but just doesn't want to be wrong. So it gives you like a really safe answer, and safe and like storytelling is not great, right? It doesn't stand out. So, but who knows 5 years from now? Who knows 10 years from now? So I mean, for us personally, like we understand that for what we do, the application side of things, it might become like really easy for AI to help people tell their stories and write essays, and that just might be something that's already cat is out of the box and can't do anything about that. But I think that like in terms of career planning and like for working with young people, I don't think someone wants a young person to be talking to a robot to figure out what their career path is. So like we have internally been trying to, I think more about the younger, like the mentorship services that we give. I think that's ultimately people are still going to want a person who has a story that a student can understand and like connect with, like an older brother, older sister figure, be motivated by, inspired by. I think that's still going to be really valuable. So for us, like, I think we're okay in the short term. Although, again, the more I read about AI, like, I don't know, like, we have 3-year-old boys, and I think about this all the time, like what the world's going to look like 14, 15 years from now when they're applying to college. Like, is college even going to be a viable strategy for people? Are there going to be jobs available for young people? I think this year we're already seeing like really like difficulty of recent grads of getting jobs, and I think AI is a big part of that. And who knows what that's going to look like, down the line. So, um, I think that, and it's not just our industry, like AI is like looming for everything. And I think it is important though, for whatever your industry is as a small business owner, is to keep up to date with those trends and try to make the many like decisions with your company to make sure that you're as AI proof as possible, if that's even feasible, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how feasible it is because it's gonna have its tentacles everywhere.
yeah.
I'm less concerned about like this idea, like these massive layoffs and all that. I don't see that per se. I mean, it's going to happen at the margins, obviously, but like some people are saying, we're never going to have to work again. It's going to do all like I don't see that. I kind of see it as and maybe this is not the best analogy, but you know, it went from, writing with a utensil to manual, like mechanical typewriters to word processors to computer, like, and you're still using it, right? You're still the operator.
Yeah.
It's just another tool now that can, you know, make the things that you do much more efficient. But we'll see. I mean, it's obviously, expanding very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what about like not writing the essays, but grading kind of the essays, like using AI to when someone has written the essay to have some sort of criteria because it's good at that, right? It's good at like looking for patterns and things like that. So if you can give it good instructions, like we do we have a sales call analyzer that we sell to companies, and it's fantastic, right? So you have a salesperson, they're on a call, they record that call, and then afterward, right now it's manual, but eventually it'll actually join your call like a note taker does.
Sure.
And then right after the call, it basically gives you a scorecard of, here are the things that you really should have talked about. Here's how do you meet objections and things like that. And here's how you can do better. And salespeople just get really, better over time because it's instant feedback right after, that conversation. So I don't know, maybe something like that for students could, in their essays or maybe, in interview prep, right?
Yeah.
It could record the interview and give, feedback on answers and things like that. That sounds like an area where it might benefit.
I think so. Yeah, for sure. Because I think that like what AI does well is that it gives like it has like a framework as to how to judge something that's somewhat informed. So I definitely think like it for writing, it knows the conventions of writing. It knows the conventions of like good communication. So I think it definitely has that. The other thing that I think AI is useful for, even in the writing process, but just generally, is like it just like iterates ideas so quickly, right? Like when you're trying to
Yeah.
rack your brain for like an idea to do something, if you just ask it to just give me like 10 ideas for like this email that I write, the subject line, or give me 10 ideas for this brand that I want. Like, and most of it will be garbage, but like, even if they just
Yep.
give you one that's good, like you get to choose it. And like, so it's really useful for that. I use it as a thesaurus all the time in writing. Like if I
Yep.
want to, I don't want to go to an actual thesaurus and have the book or whatever. It just asks, ChatGPT is like, can you give me another word for this? Like my brain's just like not firing on all cylinders today for whatever reason. Like, give me that. So
Yep.
yeah, I again, I think for the essay side, the college application side of things, I think it's inevitable. That it's gonna, change things, and it's gonna, it's so more like AI. I think, in my opinion, it helps the people who, um, are not necessarily like the ones who have like the highest grades, or the ones that are not the as productive students or workers to really level the playing fields, because it helps them to really do a lot more than what they normally would be able to do, and speed up the processes, and fill in the gaps. I think for the higher productive people out there, it's not as useful because it's not that much better than the productivity that you already have. So it is kind of like evening out productivity, which is great for people who own the
Sure.
businesses and like are hiring people and maybe can afford to pay people less, because the difference between hiring this person is not as great. But like, for the people who work really hard and have done everything the quote unquote correct way and had the best education, it's going to be, it might feel like somewhat disheartening for them. So I don't know what the answer is ultimately, but I do know that it's changing a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I just looked at the time. We're already around 30 minutes. So um this has gone really quickly. So if you, I told you I was going to ask you this. So if you had a magic wand and you could fix, one thing in your business right now, something either slowing you down, bottlenecking your growth, I don't know, eating up your time, what would that one thing be?
Yeah. So I think, for us, like digital marketing has been something. I think we were talking before this a little bit, just doing social media and digital marketing. Like we're also like very private people, and putting ourselves out there like for our company is somewhat uncomfortable. So if something could just be taken care of on the digital marketing side, and I know like that's why these services exist for people to just pay like crazy amounts of money for to just do this for you exist. But yeah, if someone could just figure out our digital marketing strategy, like make sure everything is working cohesively and we're not sending repeat emails, for cold outreach and just make everything work. That would be amazing. If you just wave that magic wand and have our social media grow to 1 million followers and I think I think that's what it is for us.
Uh, It's always difficult. I mean, that's good because a lot of businesses feel that way, and
Yeah.
that's why my business exists, right? So
Yeah.
we do a lot of that. So because it is complex, right? Because and it's no longer a very simple strategy. There's so many buckets, right, that you have to have. The way I've always talked to my clients and potential clients is I think of it as digital marketing is a puzzle, right? And you got all these different pieces and you can put one piece in and that's great, um, but it's not gonna fill in everything, right? So you really
Hmm.
want to have all of pieces and more and more and more as the technology changes, that puzzle is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and having more pieces to manage, and it just gets really difficult to
And
maintain
and
with
these
everything
things
that
are
you.
constantly changing, like the rules for Google as to how they're ranking like websites and the newest updates to the privacy settings for Meta that are going to affect your ads and all these different things. And there's like
Right.
lawsuits about these platforms ripping you off on these ads and stuff. It's like it's crazy to have to keep up with all this stuff as well. So I think we're doing an
Yeah,
okay
I mean,
job, but
I talk to a lot of people about ads, and one of the things I always tell them is, like, especially on Google Ads, like, do not do what they recommend you to
yeah,
do. That is not in your best
I
interests, right?
know.
That is in its interest. So, but if someone doesn't know that, they're going to go into Google Ads Manager and they're going to go and they're like, oh, I'm going to
I'm
recommend to do this,
optimizing.
and
Yeah.
I'm optimizing. In reality, it's really you're optimizing for them and not necessarily for you.
Yeah, Meta just
Um,
started like hiring people to like call you if you've spent enough money on their platform to like help you optimize your ads for free. And it's like, I don't trust a word that those people say whatsoever.
No, no, I wouldn't either. Although Meta ads are fantastic. I mean
Yeah.
that they are. We've seen an enormous amount of. It depends on your business, right? It depends on the type of business that you have, but I think for someone like you guys, Meta ads actually would be really really good. Their
Yeah.
ability to dial in your ICP and get really in front of the exact person
Yeah.
that you want is insane.
Meta
And
ads
so
was
just
like our first big marketing break during COVID. We started doing these online webinars, and it's like once we started like getting some leads coming in from like paid Meta ads, like that's when we realized like, oh, we could actually turn this into a business. We don't
yeah,
pretend like we're doing it like as well as we should right now, but Meta has probably been our number one like paid marketing strategy. So yeah, I can
yeah,
co-sign that for
for
sure.
sure. No,
Yeah,
I see that a lot. I mean, as soon as a business can, have the funds to incorporate that into their digital marketing strategy, I absolutely encourage it because
yeah,
it does you can see results fairly quickly. Whereas SEO, that's a long game, right? That's 6, 9, 12 months, that's just you have to do it, right?
yeah.
You have to be doing those things to build that domain authority, et cetera, but it takes a long time. Meta ads, you can see results in weeks.
Right.
Well, great. So we are definitely out of time. So where can listeners, viewers find you and learn more about Admissions Angle?
Yeah. So our website, admissionsangle.com, is the best place to start. You can learn a little bit more about what we do, who we are. If you're interested, you can book a consultation there as well. But we also are on socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, Substack at admissionsangle.com. We try to put out content. We're still working on it. But it is, I think in 2026 going to be a big part of our goal setting is to really push forward the content there and make that a lead generator as well. But
Awesome. Well, Alex, I really appreciate you joining me. This has been a fantastic conversation. It went super quick. I just kind of looked up and we were already kind of at time. So, really appreciate your time and insights. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Brad. This is a great conversation, and yeah, look forward to the next invite for another one of these.